Greetings, comrades. 'Tis I, Clunk Bunnington, the Detective Holy Bunbarian. Surely you've heard of me. And I'm here today to tell you to tune in this Saturday, July 31st, at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to witness the birth of Dice Goblins. And now, back to you, Critical Kunic. Thanks? Anyhow, greetings and salutations, my minions. Today's story is about a forever DM who, unfortunately, has to go back to being a forever DM after getting just a little glimmer of hope of being able to play as a player. Oh yeah, and before we begin the story, if you like these videos of mine and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider hitting that subscribe button and bell notification icon to be notified of my future videos. It really truly helps out more than you think it does. Anyhow, with that all said, let's roll for initiative and begin the story. Names have been changed to protect the guilty. So I'm generally one of those forever DM types, and that doesn't bother me too much, but I do get the itch to roll dice from the other side. My friend Steve hits me up and says, "A couple of people left my weekly. Do you want to hop in?" I currently don't have anything on the dates and times, so I'm like, sure. Okay, so I meet the DM, Wayne. Wayne explains a bit about the game world. There's this elaborate sort of continent map. It's a modern revisionist's game. Think rangers with rifles and leather dusters instead of armor, but also heavily influenced by A Song of Ice and Fire, in that it's regimented, and there's a lot of political intrigue. They want me to come in as a healer, so I chose Twilight Cleric / COS Druid, and the concept that I'm this sort of burnt-out war healer who's sort of snarky and pragmatic because he had a deep idealism that was mostly burnt out of him, which he covers with drinking, sarcasm, and overworking. Think a slightly less pleasant Hawkeye Pierce. My ideal hero's journey is to advance in Druid, and refine my idealism as we go. I'm set up as a younger brother of the noble who's been behind the quest chain the rest of the group is going on. They are Steve, who's playing a female Murloc artificer who's happy to not be the party's straight person anymore. Steve usually plays goofier characters in my campaign. Dylan, who's playing a human paladin who's gone full lawful stupid, par for the course. He has the standard edgelord backstory, wife and kids murdered, seeking revenge. But mostly he just follows Caleb around and is oblivious to everything. And Caleb, who is playing a completely evil bard and not actually a reformed evil cultist, although he lies and says he is, who seems to be indiscriminately violent and has left a string of NPC bodies. Great, so we have both an edgelord and a murder hobo. Now, Wayne plays by very specific rules, which is that he gives players a set of goals, and then they can basically duck off as much as they want. Wayne also has an NPC that's hanging with the party. Her name is Adria, and she's basically a walking plot hook / utility crafter. The first session starts, and I'm being introduced when the party goes off to meet my brother. The party arrives in the town by airship, and it's nighttime, so they go to an inn. The DM offers to let them go to my brother's house and stay for free, but they decline. Caleb decides he wants to gamble with the locals, and immediately starts cheating. Dylan makes his insight check to see if Caleb is cheating, and does nothing with it. The NPC he's gambling against eventually makes his cheating known, and wants to go outside to fight. Caleb goes outside and immediately casts sleep. The NPC drops like a rock because no HP, and Caleb proceeds to stab the NPC to death several times over, hide the body, and then go to bed. On his way up, he convinces Dylan that the NPC was the one cheating, and that he was just defending himself. There's also a drawn-out scene between Adria and Wayne, because Wayne wants Adria to make him a weapon, and he can't figure out how to use words properly. This takes just for ducking ever. So, 3.5 hours into a 4-hour session, I'm introduced. I say 2 things, and the session ends. Session 2 is a dinner party celebrating our presence. My character has been long exiled from high society, even though I'm the Duke's younger brother. So my plot is that nobody in the room likes me and I don't like them. But we're all trying to act polite because of formality. Meanwhile, Caleb and Dylan roll around basically acting like idiots and insulting all the NPCs, which leads to Steve and I smoothing things over. Now it's fairly obvious that Steve's character is hot for one of the NPCs, an emissary from the Blue Dragon Flight, not evil, who's also half-brother to Adria. The problem is that Steve's character is a mechanic and knows nothing about polite society. So there's a fun bit of business where I start trying to teach her some slight formality, including how to dance. We spend nearly an hour going over various polite society and etiquette things, since my character, a former noble, and me, dance classes, know how to classically dance. I think this will be a fun bit of business. Instead, the instant we start to set up that scene, Wayne decides to have Adria, his NPC, have a very public argument with her brother, also his NPC. Steve and I continue the dance training in DMs. Steve tries to go over to console the brother, but he's just too distraught to be interested. We'd only been working on that scene for nearly an hour. Trucked in the face. Caleb starts a war of words with another noble, and they go back and forth for nearly 30 minutes. Wayne seems bound and determined to not let us undercut this scene, because it's good drama. Finally, it's resolved by the Dragon Brother, again, NPC to NPC, and we end up going to High Council of Exposition. This is done literally at warp speed. I have no idea what the plot actually is at the end of the session. We're getting magical MacGuffins for reasons, and they're in places. Any sort of why I'd want to do this is completely irrelevant. After this session, I try to talk to Wayne and explain that his pacing is really ducking weird, and he mostly just gets mad at me. Session 3. So we start by retconning and redoing the Grand High Exposition. We're trying to overthrow the corrupt nobility of Landia by getting all the artifacts and making my brother king. Of course, the meta is that Adria and Steve work for a secret society that want the artifacts for Cabal reasons. Caleb wants the artifacts to restart the cult and do evil crap, and I don't trust my brother, or anybody else. So I may just dump them all into a pocket dimension and lose the key. So, we go to the dwarf area to go investigate around mine area that is a spot for a possible artifact and disappearances. So we decide we're going to split up in Dwarf Village. Steve is going to the bar for information, I'm going to the store for climbing supplies, rope, etc. Dylan is going to use his influence with the church to see if there's any information or records, and Caleb is going to the mine to get us access. 3 of us seem to get our stuff with no real issues, although Dylan meets a pompous church official, decides not to demur, and they have a long and useless back and forth. Caleb, on the other hand, runs into a dwarf guard. Wayne names all his NPCs Jimmy. We won't let him in. He fails a diplomacy, so he casts sleep on them. Except the guards have way more hit points, and they kick the crap out of him and throw him into jail. I end up walking down and talking to the guards with my supplies, and they tell me that he's thrown in jail. I go to pay his bail and use my diplomacy check, and the fact that I'm former nobility, I get us into the mines. But now none of the dwarves will help nor lead us. And we're in the Underdark. Only Caleb has the ability to speak Undercommon. We travel, have a couple of fights, and end up palling with some drow slavers that are enslaving the deep gnomes. We get a free place to stay at the work camp. While I'm resting, Steve confides that we're not leaving this place until we kill the slavers, and my response is, we should know more first. Caleb and Dylan go outside and talk to the deep gnomes, and I find out that they're planning a revolt, but they want the party's help. There's some NPC that's important to Caleb's backstory that they say they have information on. Session 3 ends. Wayne and I talk after the session, and I let slip that there's no way I'm siding with a revolution. We are miles underground, and there is obviously a duck ton of drow, since they didn't give a crap that we nuked a Drake, and a drow hunting party is on our way. We don't know where the item is that we want, and we don't have a good way out. Session 4 begins. Wayne announces that we awaken to the sounds of combat. The revolution started at dawn, so I couldn't convince us to not do it. So now we have 3 choices. Do nothing, siding with the drow, actively side with the drow, or side with the gnomes. My position is to do nothing. Steve's position is to do nothing. Steve wasn't here for the first hour or so of the session. Caleb wants to join the fight on either side, and Dylan waffles on what to do. Dylan and Caleb leave us, walking outside. Finally, Caleb's like, I'm gonna go out there and kill somebody. Dylan chooses to side with the drow. Caleb gathers all the mining explosives in a barrel of oil, convinces all the gnomes, who think he's an ally, to stack up, and proceeds to white phosphorus them all to death. Hundreds of dead gnomes. Basically my lie in a cave. He walks over and rolls to convince Dylan that it's his fault. Finally, Steve and I get outside and realize what he's done, and I immediately have had enough of his evil bull. I proceed to unload every combat trick and max spell I've got into him. I've got Caleb down to 3 HP, and Wayne has Steve's character manifest a cursed pistol that Steve has left in a sealed box, because he knew it was ducked up, and shoots me in the arm. You only take 6 damage, but you can't cast anything that uses somatic components. However, I'm a COS druid, and I don't need spells to do ranged damage. So I go into archer form and hit him, but before I roll damage, another Ex Machina shield appears, preventing the party kill. Steve finally shows up and gets explained that he just shot me and is like, I wouldn't have done that and I didn't take that gun. Yeah, but now there's a lot more drama. With that, I had it. I bombed out of the campaign and went back to forever DMing. End post. So we had 3 separate tropes going on here. We had the lawful stupid paladin with an edgelord backstory, we had the murder hobo, and we had the DM that really just wanted to tell a story, and in this case, introduce a lot of drama, and thus took the storytelling aspect out of the player's hands in most situations. Really, the only normal players were OP and Steve. So not only should OP have left the party, hopefully Steve left it too, and they stick strictly to OP's campaign. And maybe they'll get lucky and find yet another campaign to join, allowing OP to be another player instead of just being a forever DM. Yeah, there's a lot that went wrong here. I think the DM should have stopped the murder hobo tendencies, and I also think the DM should not have introduced so many NPCs that solved all of the issues for the players. Use NPCs to introduce problems and let the players be the ones that solve them. That way both sides of the coin get a little bit of action to do on their own. Anyhow, that's it for this story. As always, the source of it is in the description below. And as Krunk mentioned at the beginning of the story, definitely be sure to check out Dice Goblins this Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's when part 1 of our one-shot is going to be going live, and trust me, it is highly entertaining. You're not going to want to miss it if you like watching Critical Role or Arcane Arcade or anything else like that. Anyhow, while you wait for my future videos, here are a few related videos that you can watch in the meantime.